This weekend, my 38-year-old wife and 13-year-old daughter visited her mother. I couldn't go because I couldn't get time off from work, but we decided to make it just a girls' weekend for her. I'm a firefighter in a large southern city, and I'm on standby after a dispatcher tells me there's an emergency. Since I don't really have to for work, I pick up my phone and find a bunch of text from my kids and some messages from numbers I don't have on my phone. Over the course of about 11 texts, we find out that her daughter went ice skating, fell, and broke her wrist. She is in the emergency room, but she cannot be treated because her mother cannot be found. The number I don't recognize belongs to one of my wife's friends who went to the emergency room to care for my child. She was chaperoning girls going ice skating, so I called this friend, and after a lot of back and forth, she admitted that my wife had gone to dinner with a random guy. Due to work, we always leave our place and share it with our family. Of course, I looked up the address and Googled it, and it turned out to be the AFC King Hotel, which was 10 p.m. It's now almost 4 hours later, and she doesn't have my text. The messages were replied, but she finally called the kids. I have permission and insurance information, and she got a cast made and a referral to an orthopedic surgeon when she got home. A friend texted me to say she was going to take her daughter to her grandmother's and said sorry. Apparently she was at home. Something like this happened every time I went home. I worked a lot of overtime to pay off the house, and we had a fun vacation together. My daughter goes to the most expensive private school in our city. I noticed she doesn't have much access. I removed her as an authorized user on my credit card. She has two-factor authentication set up on almost everything she tries to touch. In my credit report, I pulled it out and found out she had opened a joint credit card, but I didn't know because I had an account and could even log in and print the charges. It turned out to be basically a perfect timeline of restaurants and hotels that she paid for. She also has some advice about Tinder and Bumble that came up when I was looking at my last few phone bills. I have a friend who is a deputy sheriff in these areas, and she will be here tonight when she gets home. She booked a room for a week in a nearby hotel and paid in advance. She can sleep there now, and from tomorrow she can figure it out on her own. Her daughter and I have talked, and her daughter knows what's going on and is angry at her mother. So the next step is that thanks to my work she can talk. I found someone. I'm fully insured, so I have one less thing to worry about. Once her wife and daughter got on the plane back here, I decided to go see her mother as well. I'll take a few days off to deal with this issue. Thank you everyone for your advice. I'll probably delete these posts tonight or tomorrow. Last update. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for their cooperation. It's amazing how many other firefighters and his LEOs are in similar situations. I soon took a few days off to take care of my ex-wife, and her daughter came home late Sunday. Her daughter immediately ran off to her room and closed the door behind me. My wife said, "Get pretty angry." And I told her the truth. I'm deaf. The anger will come later. It would be better if she was somewhere else for a while, my friend. Deputy Sheriff ALS was there and said he would sit on the terrace and be there when I needed him. I told the woman that I was recording this conversation to protect myself and my rights as her husband and her father. Then she said she was going to talk it over and work it out. What I didn't tell her was that I had spent most of the last week at work with her friends, parents, battalion chief, and a lawyer and therapist. When you take a lot of vacations in a circle of supportive colleagues, and when you have to take months off to cope, all I can say is that I'm disappointed in her, but most of all I'm angry that my daughter got caught in the crossfire because her bad behavior put her child at risk for sex. I did. She didn't admit or deny it, but then her tone changed and almost immediately she said something like, "Remember when I tried to remind you of the good times?" I started saying this about 3 times. So I told her truth. I couldn't believe my memory because I had no idea what she had done. When that didn't work, she fell into a hole. I reminded her that we had agreed on a way to build a future that would allow her to retire early. At this point, I was so angry that if she did, I told her that she could have retired at about 48 if she wanted, but that she needed to remember that promise because she would have to work for herself from now on. I'm not usually a vengeful person, but I like the idea of her having to work until she's 70 and getting mad every time she puts on her clothes to go to a job she hates. Side note, one of my coworkers is also married and has taken his family on vacation several times and expressed this opinion. Every time we went out somewhere, there was a day or two where my wife would make up an excuse to be away from her family. So I instinctively said, "It's not the first time. It was the first time you got caught?" And she just put her head down and said very quietly, "Yes." So I'm recording this confession on tape. She went to the hotel without any resistance. She wrote me a long email that said, I'm sorry. I don't know why I did this. I didn't reply to her until she got home. I spoke with her mother and also told her about her daughter being in a hotel with another man while she was in the emergency room and the credit card she opened. Her mother didn't say much, but she did say that if she had any suspicion that she was aiding or abetting her bad behavior, she would severely limit her contact with her granddaughter. That was probably my mistake, but I was so angry. My mother-in-law swore that she knew nothing and was just terribly worried that something had happened to my wife with no one to contact her. I also told my mother-in-law that I didn't forgive her. Please bring my wife back home. I would like her to leave if she could, and I have never yelled at her, hit her, cheated on her, or done anything that seemed like that to her other than what we promised when we got engaged. I hope you understand that it didn't happen. Residents, my wife's parents were separated at the time. They may have contacted her mother since her father was a notorious scammer and she was in high school. I texted a friend who took her daughter to the emergency room. I told her I didn't really care if she responded. I said that I was grateful that she was in the emergency room with my daughter, but that if my wife had known in advance where she was going, she would have contributed so much to the destruction of my family. You should know you've done your part, and a true friend would have told you that. Never encourage shitty behavior. I still don't know how to get in touch with her husband, but I guess from his nature, reading between the lines, she and her wife and I told each other on Thursday morning. I received a text message from my wife saying that her mother was renting a furnished apartment near her house and that she wanted to come pick up her belongings on Friday. If she goes to work, that's fine, she said. I would also like to mention that during this time, she only emailed her daughter once, and she never asked about her daughter in any of our interactions. When she told me she got the apartment, she didn't ask if her daughter could come visit us. I told her that she wouldn't be working on Friday, but that she was going to go out for a few hours to run some errands. I left, but as I pulled into the driveway across the street, the bailiff was waiting for me. He handed her divorce papers, which included a note from my attorney saying I was going to fight for custody of Sol and that she had visitation rights. She called my voicemail in an almost incoherent rage. Also, my attorney gave me some very good suggestions for me to tell others who are in this position. I got a new mobile phone. I don't have a phone with a number that my wife knows. The only people I gave my new number to were my lawyer, my sister, my daughter, my boss, and a few close friends at work. I check my old phone once a day to see if anything needs to be done, but since her daughter looks like me, I don't need to do a paternity test. I'm planning on purchasing an STD panel, but I don't think that's a problem either. My lawyer informed me that the woman had hired a lawyer, but I made it clear that I was going to stay home and have her daughter with me. Due to the vagaries of family law, she might have to write her a big check, but at this point, thanks to the vagaries of family law, she couldn't care less. If I could get rid of it 6 months early, I'd probably add a zero to the check.